Thank you. My name is Ariel Ben Amos. I am a city planner for the city of Philadelphia, and I've spent far too many years thinking about and wondering about how do we make our city better for our citizens, and how do we make it easier for our citizens to make their city better for themselves. And it's important for us to do that because every year 270 Philadelphians are injured in traffic accidents. 96 of our friends and neighbors die every year from traffic accidents. And that is 6 out of every 100,000 Philadelphians, which is more than New York, DC, or LA. Now this is important because over a quarter of Philadelphians live below the poverty line. And if you live below the poverty line, you are more likely to be in a traffic accident. Our poorest neighborhoods are marred by highways and speeding cars. And so what we need to do is find low-cost ways to reduce pedestrian crossing distances, to make crazy intersections more legible, and to do that in an affordable way. Because what we are doing essentially is killing our neighbors with bad road design and bad management. And so one of the things we need to do are reduce how many cars are on the street by taking parking spaces for your car and turning them into parking spaces for your tuchus. Now, that's what you see on your right are parklets. These are small platforms. They don't all come with goats, but we can find them across the city in Tacony, West Philadelphia, and Chinatown. And these parklets also promote economic development. Honest Tom's actually had to hire another person once they debuted their parklet. So many people started coming. What parklets do is they create a lot of energy on our commercial corridors. And they don't just do that, but they also provide eyes on the street, and in dense neighborhoods like Chinatown, they make it easier for residents to find some small park space where there's no park space available. What they do is help us build community one set of eyes on the street at a time. Now, it's important to pay attention to parklets because they're not just about commercial corridor revitalization. They're also about building community. In North Philly, this parklet, run by the now defunct Logan CDC, put health awareness nights, it had movie nights and other community building events in typically not a neighborhood that is not typically considered to have parklets. And then it built civic infrastructure. But what is important for us to understand is that interventions like these require a different kind of civic infrastructure to keep going. Parklets require a lot of maintenance. CDCs in Philadelphia that had parklets typically have 5 times the revenue that those that don't build parklets. They spend twice as much on their employees. Now, we're about to be spending in the city of Philadelphia close to $500 million on city parks, over 150 to 200 parks and rec locations as part of rebuild. What we have to understand is that we need to look at also the other initiatives that the city is doing, such as Vision Zero, which is trying to reduce the amount of traffic deaths in our city to 0. We're going to be doing that across the city by redesigning city streets and changing how we do enforcement. And what I'm saying to you today is that the challenge is to marry rebuild to Vision Zero. We need to create a new toolbox that allows us to make great public spaces that transcend the parks and the limits of the parks that they're in, and make it easier for our community groups to help make these public spaces so that we're not just relying on big ticket items. What we're talking about is using low-cost interventions. We're talking about paint, planters, bike racks, parklets, and these things which are called flex posts. I'll use that often. What we need is a street furniture library for neighborhood groups from Frankfurt to Eastwick so that they can borrow these interventions. But they need another tool. They don't just need flex posts and bike racks, they need insurance. Insurance is the secret sauce that makes all of these projects worthwhile. And by worthwhile, I mean workable. The streets department is not going to let anybody do anything without insurance. And there's another invisible tool that they need that is not just flex posts, it's technical capacity. Your average city community group is not going to understand the difference between the footway, the right-of-way, and the cartway, and the difference that the streets department makes between all of them. There are hundreds of rules, and your average neighbor, Ms. Yvonne, Mr. John Elfrey, they are not going to be able to take the time, they're not going to be able to understand the code, And what's sad is the streets department isn't going to be able to take the time to talk to them about it. We spend less per capita on our city streets than Baltimore. Pittsburgh and Chicago as well. Our streets department folks have to spend all their time working on over 2,500 miles of road. They don't have the time for a parklet, and they don't have the capacity to work with over 270 registered community organizations that are knocking on their door asking them to do something about this. So what we're looking at is a mismatch between demand, need, and capacity. And if Ms. Yvonne wants to transform her corner from what you see on the right to what you see on the left, she's not going to be able to do that without some help. This is not about beautification. This is not about tactical urbanism. This is about building civic capacity. Our streets used to be littered with us. We used to play in the streets. You would see Italian markets from North Philly to West Philly. But what happened? Well, as the cars started coming into our city streets, it started killing us. Now, what's important to recognize isn't that, yes, traffic accidents have been with us since the 1920s. What is important to recognize is that when we started fighting back and mothers against cars started protesting, the auto industry fought back. And the auto industry created the term the jaywalker. They wanted you to be at fault for the traffic accident. Now, I bring all of this up because what the history proves time and time again is that in order to transform our streets, we need champions. We need a CDC for the street. And so what I'm proposing is that Streetbox PHL be that champion and be that toolbox for you to make your streets better. So at the end of the day, please talk to me. I'm looking to pilot these projects.